Today's video is on creating loving discipline. For those of you who watched my question and answer for this month, might have heard me talk about keeping those promises to ourselves or holding ourselves accountable to these new activities as we begin a healing journey. Another word that we can use for that is discipline, right? Making a promise and keeping it. Our perspective around discipline really originates in our earliest experiences, often in our homes, watching our caregivers model discipline or lack thereof. It also, incorporates how we were disciplined, right, in childhood or kept accountable in the childhood home. This also expands outside of the home, right, to our school systems, to our community. And remember, as children, we are absorbing all information about the world, and we are integrating that in terms of rules, systems, programs, whatever the analogy we want to use is for that subconscious part of our mind. So a lot of us are operating on those older systems, particularly around discipline, right? So if you grew up in a home where parents, right, didn't have discipline themselves, where there was a lack of structure, this is also the other side of the spectrum, right? Growing up in a home that was over-disciplined or over-structured. Those experiences and all of them in between can impact our adult relationship with discipline. So, how do we begin to cultivate discipline, loving discipline in our life? We have two steps. First, we want to reflect, right? Reflect on how these past experiences are coloring our relationship with discipline in our adulthood. So we might begin to reflect. We can do it, thinking in our mind. Some of us like journaling, so we could write reflection, thinking about how we were punished or how we were reprimanded as a child when we did something wrong, right? Now, putting wrong in quotes, because again, right and wrong is decided upon by those caregivers, right? So when we did something that they deemed inappropriate or not how they wanted to see us behave, explore with yourself. What did punishment look like? What did reprimand look like? Was it yelling? Was it withdrawal of affection? I know for me, that's how I was punished. My mother in particular, when upset, when she got to a certain level of upset, I should say, because it would have to be an extremer, thing I did wrong, if you will, she wouldn't speak to me. Right, so that in and of itself is a punishment. So a removal can also be. Of course, then there's the more typical that we think of, the screaming and the yelling. I urge you to take some time and explore what it looked like in your childhood experience. Remember, also explore environments outside of the home, right? Where there are moments in childhood that you were disciplined or reprimanded in your school, right? Or in your community or in some organization that you took part in. So explore for yourself. And then begin to look at how this shows up in your adulthood, right? Begin to ask yourself and reflect upon how you punish yourself. A lot of us internalize these modes of punishment that we were modeled in childhood. And then when we do something we deem wrong or that we feel shameful or guilty around, we engage in our own self-flagellation or self-punishment. So look at those ways. Right? For you, is it depriving yourself of food? Is it restricting yourself to not do the thing that you wanted to do, the joyful, event that you were going to take yourself to? Do you shame yourself? I know a lot of us have an inner critical voice. Does it look like constant shaming yourself for the thing you did wrong? Negative thought cycles, right? That same thing, ruminating in my mind. So I urge you, take some time, explore the ways that you punish yourself. For me, I really resonate with the restriction. When I've done something wrong, and I feel badly, I tend to punish myself in that way. Sounds familiar, right? I remove something good from myself. Just like my mom removed the goodness of my mother and that object, that attachment I needed so desperately. So I do the same thing in my adulthood. I remove, I restrict. A lot of you will find that alignment. So once we've spent time reflecting, and I spend time, watch yourself for days, weeks. This doesn't have to be a one-shot thing. Really look into and observe and reflect and spend time on that first step. And then the action step. What then can I do? choose one small ritual. Make one small daily promise that you're going to begin to practice keeping for yourself. This is how we cultivate discipline. We make a promise and we keep it. Those of you who follow me know I often talk about small daily promises, and that when I do, I put such a huge emphasis on the small. We want to set ourselves up to succeed. We don't want to have a 5-item to-do list as my new thing I'm going to do and then hold myself accountable to do those new 5 things. We want to pick something so small and then practice keeping that promise. Once we've kept it, we want to acknowledge ourselves. First and foremost, observe that we kept it. We kept that small promise. Avoid any tendency to minimize it or to criticize it, right? Like that punitive parent might be doing in your head. Validate yourself. Acknowledge that you showed up for yourself and reward yourself. Honor yourself in some way for doing that. It's much harder than it seems. And then if and when you don't show up for yourself, because creating change is hard, we have that pull of our subconscious keeping us in those familiar patterns. So when we don't show up for ourselves, begin to talk to ourselves as a wise inner parent, not as a critical one. We can acknowledge that it's okay, that today you felt tired and you felt drained and you just didn't do it. We can acknowledge that we will try again tomorrow. Remember, this too takes practice, especially if you're someone who's resonating with that critical voice, because you've lived years now where you've internalized these shame-based voices. So as you begin to practice this final step, there's a big party that's not going to believe it, that's not going to believe it's okay, that's not going to believe that tired is an excuse, that is not going to believe that tomorrow is good enough. So this is where we need to practice cultivating a new voice, a voice that honors our experience as opposed to the critical voices that so many of us have internalized. So I hope you found this helpful, especially if you tuned in after hearing the last video. Okay, if I have a partner, if I need to learn how to show up for myself in a new way and I don't have people around me doing it, these are the steps that we want to take. We want to begin to cultivate what I call loving discipline, so that we can create habits that can quite literally change our lives and those around us.